so perfectly dovetails into what I'm about to ask you. In a way I did not intend. In a way I did not intend. Eliz, I'm so sorry to tell you, but you have
Right.
passed away. You have gone on to meet your maker,
Mhm.
whoever they may be in your mind. And
Mhm.
they have said to you, Eliz, I can answer one question about your life specifically, or about life in general. And you are now given the opportunity to ask that question.
Wow. And then after I ask the question, I go on to heaven and or wherever I go. Yeah.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
say that's your question then.
Wow. Um,
And
that's interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
there's no perfect question.
Yeah.
And then at some point, as we talk about it, you can, as has been the case, you can be like, actually, what I really wanted to know was this. It's kind of like smelling wine. And by that, I mean, just say the first thing that comes to your mind. There's not a wrong one.
Well, that's what I thought you were gonna say because when you were like, "Oh, about your life," I'm like, "Oh, that's interesting." And then you said about life in general, and my first thought was, "Why cancer? Like, why did you invent cancer, and
Uh-huh.
why so much suffering?
Mm-hmm.
Just why?"
What, but cancer in particular, like why of, oh
Cancer in
yeah.
particular, yeah, just because
Mm-hmm.
it's like, I mean, it's touched my life. We've lost a lot of people, loved ones to cancer, like,
Yeah.
something that you live with for a while and you suffer with for a long time, or you don't make it, or it comes back multiple times. Like, it's just like, why? Why cancer?
Yeah.
Why can't we figure it out? Why can't we solve it? Why does it keep changing? Why kids? Why in the
Yeah.
world would you give children cancer? Like,
Yeah.
why would you do that? So, for a being that's, you know, created life and is, who we worship and celebrate and hope to meet at some point, like, why would you do this? Yeah.
Yeah. Do you,
Hmm.
what a great question.
Yeah.
Let's unpack it a little bit, if you don't mind. I understand this is
Totally. Yeah.
a sensitive topic. Um,
This is a serious show that you are.
I don't know.
It
There's
goes however
no
it goes. Yeah.
thematically. It's really we're figuring that out as we go along. Um,
Yeah, that's
the,
but it's interesting. That's the first thing that came to my mind, though. I don't know why, but that is.
if you had to delve a little deeper about why it would be, you said specifically it has touched you personally, so that would make sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
In this answer, it implies that there is a being
Hmm.
that had the ability to not make cancer. Yes,
Right. Yeah.
is that a thing that you believe in?
Yes, I am a pretty deeply spiritual and practicing religious person. So
Hmm.
talking to God is something I do um, daily and
Hmm.
often. Yeah.
Yeah. Were you
Hmm.
raised a particular faith?
Yeah, Lutheran. I'm a
Uh,
good old German Lutheran girl. So
hmm.
my family came over on the boat from Germany in the 1840s and settled
Hmm.
in the hill country of Texas. And my great 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 grandfather was the first Lutheran pastor in this tiny town called Fredericksburg. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
so did you see News of the World, the new Tom Hanks
I
movie
did
that came
not
out?
know.
It's kind of truly like where they end up is like what my family was, like
Hmm.
German settlers. And I think they went
What
to New Braunfels in that movie, but like, we were the next town over. So
what are the uh, what are the differences between Lutheranism? Let me get this right. Is it like original Protestantism? Is that what?
I describe Lutheranism as like Reformed Catholicism. So it's like Martin
Okay.
Luther, 95 Theses. He was like, these are all the things you're doing wrong. So,
Hmm.
yes, we were kind of like, I think, one of the first Protestant religions.
The
And
original,
it,
wouldn't that be the original
I,
Protestant
I,
religion, I
I
guess?
would, I would think, yeah.
Hmm.
But I'm also not a religious scholar. So,
Hmm.
but it is, in some ways still pretty formal and traditional and
Hmm.
similar hymns and stuff like that, but it isn't.
Do you currently
Because
practice?
I do. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I go to a
Mhm.
lovely little Lutheran church in Santa Monica, St. Paul's Lutheran Church.
That's
We've been
great.
meeting virtually for the last year. So,
Oh,
yeah.
nice, nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the question you asked, why
Yeah.
cancer,
Yeah.
sounds like if you have that type of faith, must be something that's incredibly hard to rectify with your faith. And I don't want to put any
Yeah.
thoughts in your mind. I'm just asking, is that a thing that you feel?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you know, it's faith as a practice like anything else, yoga, meditation, whatever
Hmm.
or running or whatever it is something you actually have to like flex and exercise and practice. I don't just like blindly believe in God and think like everything's great in the world. Like,
Hmm.
bad shit has happened and continues to happen. And sometimes I just don't, you know, sometimes I have some hard conversations with God and myself, like,
Hmm.
yeah, this one I don't understand. Like some other things I know that I understand. And then I know the answer is that, God doesn't create these things. He's there to help get us through them.
Hmm.
Um, but sometimes it doesn't feel that way. Like
Hmm.
sometimes you want to find a reason or you know, blame
Uh,
somebody. And yeah.
I'm going to preface this with, in no way am I looking to uh, I think if I did this 20 years ago, I'd be like, here's why your faith is wrong. In no way am I attempting, but I do,
Yeah.
I am curious. I was raised Catholic, so I
Mm.
have, thank you for breaking off from the church. We were having enough of your people.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. How is that for you being raised Catholic?
Um, it has probably built a lifetime of guilt that is so deeply embedded into my formative years that I'll never fully be able to get rid of it. And it still find myself praying in certain situations where I'm like, I am, I am so confused about my view. Most of the time, I'm such a hardcore nihilist, and then
Hmm.
I realized, and then there's certain times like, oh, there has to be something beyond this, but that purely comes from I just if there is literally nothing, I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep going anymore. So it's just,
Totally.
as
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
talked
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
it's like it's just a lie. I'm just looking for the most easily believable lie for me to keep
Yeah.
going.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so what are some of those hard questions that you said, for example, well, God didn't create it, but He
Hmm.
is here to guide us through it. That to me feels
A
like
guide. Yeah. Yeah.
some logical problematic aspects of that. You can't be an
Hmm.
all-knowing and all omnipotent creator and create a thing that you didn't know. Does that make sense? Um,
Yes. Right.
mhm,
I mean, I think, he is God. He's not human, you know?
mhm,
And so like we are the ones who are, you know, sinning and dealing with the day-to-day aspects of being human, right?
mhm,
Um, you know, I don't like to think that God like just like threw war down on us or threw like Hitler down or threw like all these like terrible, terrible, terrible
mhm,
things. He's there to keep, to keep people from being bad or, like for those who, you know,
mhm.
but I don't know, nowhere in the
Uh,
Bible does it mean like, I think, does it say like, and now cancer.
yeah,
Um,
I can't.
but am I making it up myself? Do we do that where um, I need to believe in a God who, you know, accepts things, like, or like is my version of God. I guess we all have our own versions.
I love what you just said. I need to believe in. Can you
Mhm.
elaborate on that a little bit more? Meaning, like,
Well,
for you to
well, similar to what you
continue.
were, so similar to what you were saying, like that I'm not the greatest thing that's been placed on this earth. Like there actually is a greater purpose for all of us being here. Like we
Mhm,
should live our lives in service of those in our life, the greater good, humanity, the earth, like there is like a greater purpose to life than just, you know, me, my day-to-day wants and needs.
mhm.
Yeah. And so I think
Um,
I look to God for that, just that connectedness that you have to, other people in the world who, I don't know, are out there to serve a higher purpose as well. Yeah. Because I don't, I say God and I accept that all the various versions of God or a higher being that all different religions have too. I don't think one is above the other.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Do you feel like in what you're saying is there's a value in believing in it, even if you don't truly believe in it?
Uh,
Is that what you're saying?
I think there's a value. Say that again, Brent. So I think there's
There.
a value to believing in it, but I don't think that believing is easy.
Hmm.
And I don't think it just comes naturally. Like I don't have blind faith. Like I think my faith is challenged often.
Hmm.
And, for whatever reason, I keep coming back to it. Now, whether or not that some of the like you were saying, like, I mean, my mom is a very religious person.
Hmm.
Um, and
Does she want to be on
she's
this podcast?
she would love, that's interesting. My mom, she would probably be an interesting person to talk to because she also has a very narrow view of what religion should be and how one should practice. And it's just like how she does it, but it's kind of
Hmm.
like, in that way, it feels more tradition, right? That's like the way you're raised, going to church on Sundays, being in the pew, standing up at this time, singing at this time, like it feels
Hmm.
very like, um, you know, there's a comfort in that tradition, right? A little
Hmm.
bit in that practice. But then I find there's like the spiritual practice, right? The actual like, I don't know, the stuff that happens outside of church on Sundays or just like in your day-to-day life, practice.
Hmm.
So I don't think you have to be in a pew on Sunday morning to believe in God or, have a spiritual connection. But that's what I'm like. I don't have just like blind faith. I actively practice it, but some of it is just like built in from the like 18 years I spent at home doing what I was told.
Yeah.
And then there's the time that you kind of go out and find it yourself and find your own community and, people that
With
speak to you. Yeah.
uh, with your faith, if I may return to your question, so let's say the
Yeah.
answer is um, as one as seems to be sometimes a common answer within this, it's for a reason that you as a human simply could not understand. That's why I created cancer. Is that a satisfying answer to you?
I think so because I think that's the only answer we're ever going to get. I'll like it's beyond your understanding, like in this hypothetical situation, like I don't,
Can I
I don't know if
posit
ever
this?
I'm uh-huh, yeah.
I mean, there is another possible answer is merely all that happened is you're an organic being, and unfortunately, as those cells happen to multiply, they happen to mutate, and as a result, it will become an unfortunate host. They will become that the mutations occur is of no fault of their own, and that's
Hmm.
just the nature of when organic matter comes together. So that, I mean, that is another answer possible. I
Hmm.
mean, to what I mean, that's what it scientifically would be described as. Not a particularly satisfying answer.
Yeah.
Well, if that were the answer received, how does that feel compared to it's beyond what your understanding could be?
I mean, what that would say to me is like, I didn't mean to. I just like made humans and then like you guys like evolved how you were, it's like
Yeah,
I didn't have the like presence of mind to see that, coming. Um,
but isn't that the same thing that you said with I didn't create war or Hitler? Like it's
I,
like you were giving this creator like a pass on like the really bad stuff to be like, well, yeah, it created everything, but you can't know what your kids are gonna do when you're not around. Like it's not like
yeah.
it
Right,
feels a
which is
little
well,
convenient.
but that cycles. I mean, I think that's what like Pastor Jim would say. He's like, he didn't create this, Elizabeth, but he's there for us to help get us through.
Yeah. but I
Yeah.
feel I can never get over that logic. There's such a monster logical flaw that you can't be the all-knowing creator and create a thing. You're like, that didn't mean for that to happen, unless and we talk about it as like a flawed creator. Like, is
Yeah.
there a
Yeah.
major religion
Mm.
that is God is not all-knowing? He's just he was real, or he, she. I don't want to speak in gender terms. Whatever
Sure.
they
Yeah.
are, um, they were just real good at it. They were just real good inventor, but not the best. So
Yeah.
that I would align with that a little bit more.
Mm.
Does that does it bother your face says that occasionally that bothers you? I'm attempting to read what you're thinking about.
Totally. I mean, I'll just never understand why some life, you know, life is throws some really hard curveballs at some people more than others. And I'm like, why? They've had enough suffering, like
Hmm.
enough already with this one person, like let's spread the suffering around a little bit. You know, I yeah, I
I
won't
don't
know.
think
And
anyone
it
will understand.
definitely challenges, you know, I mean, definitely challenge. That's a definite faith challenging moment.
Hmm. But I don't
Yeah.
think anyone will understand. I don't think anybody's going to ever give you. Um,
Yeah.
that's why I don't how to look at it at anything but chaos of why should a child be born and 3 months later die of malaria? That's like that. What? How can I can't find any world, any logic, any like comfort that's like, yeah, of course that's gotta happen. That's just the way things are meant to be. That's just it's part of a plan you don't see. I get
Yeah.
why we say those things. But that what cold comfort? That means nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. Or the other statement of like your people are given what they can handle, and I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, but that too, that just like, I don't know, like that doesn't really seem fair,
I
like,
I know. I've mentioned this previously. It's like someone being in a car crash, in a horrible car crash, and they're on the highway, and someone is going over to them, and that person is in the last like moments of their life, and they're just like, "Oh, it was just more than I could handle," and they're out. Like people who are dead aren't going to be like. The implicit thing is that oh they were given too much and they
too
couldn't
much.
handle
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that just feels. Um, I realize a lot. I'm looking for you to answer things that you don't know the answer to because I want the
Hmm.
answer to myself because it feels very ungratifying, whatever we're
Hmm.
attempting to do. And by that, I mean this day to day slog.
Yeah.
Do you feel like having children has had an impact on your how you view it?
View what? Uh, God, they.
Yeah. Or more broadly, like what you're doing here, what the greater
You know,
purpose is.
I it I went into parenting with my eyes open, but it has expanded what I thought was possible in terms
Hmm.
of like how much you can love someone. And yes, that now my purpose is not me whatsoever. Like it's just like,
Hmm.
I say this to Grace all the time, that like my number one job in the world is to keep you safe. Like that's
Hmm.
it. So that's it. I just like live every day trying to keep Grace and Hazel safe. Yeah.
How does that
I
feel?
Important.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's also fun. Like, this year has been the shittiest
Hmm.
in the world. But the girls totally got me through it,
That's a bold
for sure.
stance, Eliz. Bold stance that the last year was bad. You're going out on a line.
Right?
Saying, bold stance saying the last year was bad. I don't know. It's really you're going out
Oh
on a
my
limb there.
God.
Yeah.
Oh my God. What a traumatizing year it has been. Um, but really like we did okay, and the girls were that. So Hazel's first year of life will forever be pandemic, right?
Hmm.
And it's just going to just be this, it's like entrenched in my like brain.
Are you comforted
Now that
knowing
we're,
that
we're
she will
pro-
have no recollection though?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Except for when I tell her, she's gonna be like, "Oh yeah, mom, I remember you had me in a pandemic, and like
Mm.
no one could come to the hospital, and everybody abandoned you, and you're by, like whatever." So like,
But it'll be nothing. It'll be nothing because there's no like. Hopefully, there's never a touchstone for her where she's like, "Oh, it'll be like the other pandemic that I suffered through." Like hopefully it will
yeah, yeah,
continue to
yeah,
be this weird
yeah.
outlier that she didn't have to suffer
I
through.
hope so. My grandmother had polio when she was 18, and
Hmm.
like a really severe case of polio, and survived that. So I've been talking to her like a lot about. I mean, that was a different type of pandemic, that different type of virus, that
Hmm.
affected the world in a different way, but was like really scary there for a time. So
Yeah.
yeah, but yes, I do hope that Hazel isn't like comparing this to future pandemics. But
Hmm.
yeah.
Are there, as we talked about this, have any other questions arisen? Anything that you said why cancer was when you heard about life in general? Is there anything other when you talk about your life specifically that perhaps?
Yeah, I don't know. So I think about death a lot, by the way. So
Hmm.
I'm bringing up, like, I have death fantasies a lot. And I'm use the word fantasy because they're like, you know, it's not a good thing necessarily, but I think I've often think about like what would happen if Jeff died, what would
Yeah,
happen if the girls died. It's just and sometimes my brain goes into like a full like motion picture of that moment and what's happening, and it's played
I
out in
fully
different ways.
relate to what you're saying, and I know that, yeah, I'm
And,
always
and
amazed when
yeah,
people don't do that.
I mean, and I've been thinking about death since I was like 9. But I was
Yeah.
never worried about my own death. I was worried about my grandparents' death, like just like the death of people.
Did something
Um,
happen when you were at that age?
I mean, I lost a lot of older relatives when I was 9.
Hmm.
Like my great grandfather was 99. So nothing overly traumatic, but I must have gone to a good amount of funerals that
Yeah.
year, and I was a pretty deep thinking
Mm.
kid,
Yeah.
serious kid anyway. But I distinctly remember like a conversation in bed with my dad one night. I was crying and worried about death. And yeah, I think now being a parent, I look at him like it was probably like a Tuesday night, and he was like, "Go to bed, Elizabeth, please, just
I
go to
gotta get up
sleep."
and go to fucking work. Oh my God, I don't have
Exactly.
time for your bullshit.
And
Save it
they
for
just
college. Save it for your dorm room.
my brother had just been born, so we had like a newborn at home too, and they're like, "Ah, man, like I got a
Yeah.
baby," and like the oldest was worried about death. It's like too
Yeah.
much. So like I had ulcers as a kid. I was definitely like a
Yeah.
serious,
Yeah.
thinking kid. But I have occasionally thought of like, if I were to suddenly die, like what would happen to the girls, and what would they think of me, and like what would I have, what would they
Yeah.
remember, have impressed upon them. So I don't have any big questions for God specifically
That's
about
a
my
big
life.
question. I
So
feel like the question could be, and not to like, unfortunately, you've passed. Hey, Maker, what will my family remember of me,
yeah,
or what
that's a good
will?
question. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
and it is another unfortunate thing. I think they are more common now of doing living wakes, and that's typically for people who are ill. But of
Mm.
it's unfortunate that there aren't more cultural events in which we let people know the impact they have on our lives while they're still healthy and still
Hmm.
not with.
Hmm.
It's not like it happens after it's too late. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah, it's there are 2 times in your life that you get everybody you love together. One
mm,
that you get to be together. One is your wedding, and one is your funeral. So
yeah.
like that was an advice I was given when we had our wedding. It was like, this sucks, but enjoy it because you won't be at the next one. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a nice way to put it. Oh, I was like the first thing I thought of when you said that was so make sure when they come to your wedding, make sure they RSVP for your funeral. Like I don't know why. Like I thought we've also planned this. It's probably going to
Please
be in
don't
this
make.
amount of time. We hope. But
So yeah, yeah.
um, with that thought, do you is that a daily thing that you maybe not focus on a lot, but um, your legacy for your family, or like what how your daughters will view you, how your husband will view you? Is that a thing that spends a lot of time in your mind?
Brandon, it does, but I don't think that I like then manufacture behavior around it. I think I just like think about it and set it some sort of intention to like just love everybody as hard as I can and then do that, because I don't try it, I
And
think
then
most
it's
of the time
Tuesday and you've got to clean, you've got to make a meal, and then you're like, yeah,
then
you're,
you're in it. Yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah,
I've got this right here, this pack and play with toys because that's been the co-working thing with Hazel that I've been doing right now. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah. Hmm.
Um, I, I understand. It's sometimes those moments are worse when you're like, oh, I had this intention of being this way, and then I got caught up in life, which everyone does.
Hmm.
And then you realize, oh no, I never fulfilled that thing, and I've never. Uh, I'm just here to depress you. How am I doing?
Oh, I'm not depressed at all. I'm having a
Oh,
great
good, good, good,
conversation.
good.
I'm really enjoying this. Um,
Up.
yeah,
Do you have
I
any
don't know.
final thoughts for me?
Um, is I kind of want to ask you like the same question. Like, do you have a daily thoughts about your legacy and how you want to be remembered?
Oh, constantly. I would say fairly frequently, yes, I do have, and they often come late at night. They often come as I watch other friends either experience great success or different success, or um, um, you'll hear about like people are like, oh yeah, you know a lot about beer. I'm like, that's the shorthand, huh? That's all this, and that's what you, and not all this. I don't mean it in that way at all, but it's just odd what the little hooks are that people put into
Yeah.
you as a person.
Hmm.
Um, so I do think about it. I don't know how to change it. I,
Yeah, right. Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
also, um, uh, and not to say this is, I think not having any children is both a freedom and a torture in the sense of um, what am I trying to say? I have more time to perseverate about the fact of, well, you didn't do a thing that, is a pretty common thing to do for married people. So what are you going to be remembered by?
Mm.
And I remember hearing, I don't know, if 500, who was remembered from 500 years ago? Shakespeare, and there's not many other people. So given
Yeah,
enough
yeah,
amount of
yeah.
time, it doesn't matter. Your legacy is not going to be um, legacy is so there's so much hubris about it, you know what I mean, so much ego. I
Yeah,
can't imagine. It's a very specific thing to have the amount to have time to think about how you'll be remembered. That
yeah,
is kind of crazy, right?
totally.
um, yeah,
But it
so
would
I,
be nice to think that we make a mark somewhere that lasts. I don't know how, but it's, somewhere in the world, right? Something that we do.
oh god, if we don't, Eliz, man, that's it, right? Like sometimes I'm like, I'm gonna just be nice to this person at who's ordering from me at a job that I hate, so they maybe will reflect upon, I was really rude to that bartender, but they
Yeah,
were really nice to me in return.
yeah,
And if that's the one thing, like, well, I did something, like,
yeah,
in
yeah,
this time,
totally.
which
Yeah, yeah.
whatever that means. So um, yeah, Eliz, you're such a lovely human being. Thank you so much for your
Yeah.
time today.
Oh my God, thanks for inviting me. This is awesome.
Of
Deep
course.
thoughts. I'm gonna think about it the rest of the day.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry for that.